Hey everybody, welcome to Vacuum Wars, where I usually put vacuums through all kinds of tests to do reviews to help you make informed decisions about your vacuum and robot vacuum purchases. Well, today I'm really excited because I was recently introduced to a new way to test a vacuum suction that to me makes a lot more sense than the previous ways I've been doing it, and it will certainly impact how I grade and review vacuums in the future. So I put every upright and cordless vacuum that I have on hand to this test, which is about 46 or so vacuums, and the results and the winners were pretty interesting. At least I think so. This video is for all you nerds out there because it's about to get pretty technical, so links in the description and let's get started. Let me first describe the problem with the current suction testing methods I use. I test airflow and suction with every vacuum I review. In most of the official testing guidelines, they require a sealed suction test. Typically this is done at the hose of the vacuum, or on a cordless you could do it at the wand or at the base. I usually do both. There are also guidelines on sealed tests at the cleaner head, which I also do, at least with airflow. A sealed suction test is good for determining the raw or potential power of a vacuum, and while those things can translate to the actual vacuum's performance, it can also be more or less meaningless. The reason is because the actual performance of the vacuum depends as much or more on the design of the floor head, the business end of the vacuum, if you will. Look at 100 different vacuums and you'll see 100 different designs of floor heads. They're all trying to find the perfect balance between debris pickup and a good seal. It's basically about efficiency, how best to use that power without wasting too much of it. And it's a double-edged sword. If you make a cleaner head with too good of a seal with no air holes, I call these air holes gates, that vacuum will be great for sucking up debris from cracks and hard floors, and it will do great with deep down dirt and carpets, but as a kind of trade-off for having such a good seal, that same vacuum will usually be basically useless for hard floors. And even on carpets, it won't pick up large debris. It'll just push it around, something we call snow plowing. So vacuum manufacturers have all been trying to figure out a way to have the best of both worlds, to minimize the loss of suction by making the gates smaller or fewer in number, but also large enough to be able to pick up larger debris, and it's really hard to have both. Anyway, a few weeks ago I was reviewing a new cordless vacuum called the Loop, and I saw that they were using a measurement from a test they called an unsealed suction test, which was interesting to me for reasons I'll get into in a minute, but to make a long story short, I more or less duplicated their testing rig. Basically, it's a flat surface with a hole, with a tube which is perfectly sealed to that hole, and running to a manometer, which is a digital suction meter. The reason I liked this unsealed suction or usable suction test is that it's a way to judge the floor head's design as well as the motor's power. In other words, it's taking into account the number and size of the gates and the seals like squeegees, etc., as well as the motor's output. So it's a much better quantifier of a vacuum's performance. Let's talk a little bit about methodology first. When testing a vacuum, I would spend a lot of time trying to find the best place on the vacuum head to test. For example, many vacuums have their air hose right down the middle, meaning that the strongest suction would be dead center in the vacuum's head. But others have the hose to one side or another, in which case I made sure to test its max suction number from there. I also tested their low and high power numbers when applicable, or if they had an option to turn the brush roll on and off, I tested it in both ways, which usually made a big difference, though not always for the same reasons. Some vacuums got multiple entries. For example, some of the newer Dyson cordless vacuums have adjustable gates, which when closed are absolutely amazing on this test since they basically have a perfect seal. But as you might guess, they're pretty useless for hard floors or large debris in that mode, so I also tested them with the gates open, which is the way most people will use them in their homes, and as you can see, there is a big difference. Similarly, a lot of cordless vacuums come with multiple types of heads, one with small gates made for carpets and one with a soft roller for large debris and a great seal. So again, I tested them both. Some vacuums use a height adjustment. For them, I just tested them in their lowest possible setting, but not in their highest, because basically on their highest setting it would be a score of 0, since it basically loses all of its seal that way. Besides, there really were only a few vacuums I tested that had a height adjustment. Finally, before I get to the test results, I want to hit something that's crucially important and one of the reasons I did this test in the first place. Because of the popularity of cordless vacuums, it's become really important to make vacuums more efficient in order to get the best performance for the longest amount of battery life. For example, some cordless vacuums claim to be as powerful as upright vacuums, but often that's only with the cordless vacuum in its max power mode, which it can only sustain for 6 to 10 minutes at best. Some of the cordless vacuums can last 30 to 60 minutes or more, but that's only in their lowest power setting, which is nowhere near as powerful as an upright. So in order for cordless vacuums to ever really compete with an upright, they will need to be very efficient. They will need to find a way to equal the usable suction performance of an upright while using as little power as possible to be able to sustain battery life. And that is all about the head design, which this test will highlight. Moving on to the test results, and I will for the moment cover up the number 1 spot so we can reveal it and talk about it later because there is a lot to say. The first few results are kind of what you would expect. For example, notice that the 3 Dyson cordless models that come with the torque drive head, which had those adjustable gates, were in the top 5 when the gates were in their totally sealed positions. You can see that they dropped down to the middle of the road when those gates were open, which is still impressive. You will also see that some of the particularly powerful vacuums that came with a soft roller are up here as well. Remember that the soft roller basically creates a perfect seal, but because it's soft, it can allow larger debris in too, which is why I usually recommend a soft roller if you have 100% hard floors in your home. The downside is that soft rollers don't agitate carpet, so they're basically useless for deep cleaning carpets, which is why vacuums usually come with another head for carpets in the package, but it can be kind of a pain to change them back and forth as you clean your house, in my opinion. I should mention that the Commercial Sanitaire, which is in the number 3 slot, is the only vacuum on this list with a direct air motor. And since I tested it on its lowest height setting, it was right on the floor, basically a perfect seal. So not very practical for most situations. Even on carpet, that's just a little too low, especially considering it doesn't have a hose for larger debris. One notable vacuum was the Dyson Multi-Floor 2, which has a technology unique to Dyson called an adjustable base plate, which adjusts to the height level of the floor, making a great seal when it needs it, but it will adjust up automatically when it encounters larger debris. It's not amazing for hard floors or larger debris in general, but much better than most vacuums that have such a good seal, so it's a bit more impressive than the others on this list so far. Some vacuums like the Shark Duo Cleans, which have a soft roller up front and a regular roller for carpet agitation in the back, kind of bridge the gap, and both the cordless and corded Duo Cleans did better than average at this test, especially if you take into account debris and surface versatility. Moving on to the winner. It's probably not a surprise that it was the Loop cordless vacuum, since they are the ones I got the idea from this test from in the first place. But look at these numbers and let me take a second to explain how interesting this is. So as you can see, it absolutely crushed the competition. Like, it's not even close. It's even more impressive when you realize that it has those high numbers and it can pick up large debris as well. And not just a little, like it's one of the best on this list, period, for large debris pickup. And because the Loop has a regular brush roll for carpet cleaning as well as a soft roller, and because of the seal, which we've been talking about, it can clean carpets as good or better than the corded vacuums even on low power, which is why in the review of the Loop, the thumbnail says, quote, "This changes everything." As I mentioned, other vacuums have to be on max power to deep clean carpets perfectly, which reduces their battery life significantly. Cordless vacuum manufacturers have been compensating for this by adding extra batteries or adding automatic suction adjustment features, which only use high power for carpets and bring that power back down for hard floors to save battery life. But look at the Loop's low power unsealed suction number. It's 5 times more powerful with usable suction in low power than its closest competitor, and almost 30 times more powerful than the worst cordless on this list in low power. You can use a cordless vacuum in low power, so you can vacuum for like 30 to 60 minutes and actually get a really deep cleaned carpet. All in all, this test is pretty interesting, and it really helps me at the very least to put into context some of the other data points I get during the tests of vacuums, and I will be incorporating it into every vacuum review from here on out. Maybe even robot vacuums as well, but I haven't figured out a way to do that just yet. I feel like I should mention that the original review I did of the Loop was sponsored in the sense that they sent me a free unit, and the links to Loop as well as to the other vacuums in the description are affiliate links. So I would understand if you thought this video was biased, but as always, while the tests that I do may not be perfect, they are my best attempts at being accurate and consistent, and I'm reasonably confident that they could be duplicated by anyone who wanted to try. Thanks to the nerds for sticking around, links in the description, and be sure to subscribe to Vacuum Wars before you leave.